Hi, this is Andy,
And this is Tom.
and we put
America
America first.
first.
All right. Today's episode, what do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about Black Lives Matter
How did I
and
know? How did I know it was going to be some kind of Black Lives Matter type issue? Of course. That's what's in the news. That's what's been going on, and people been dying, getting shot. So, what's caught your attention?
well, just that. I mean, I think now people are finally starting to realize that Black Lives Matter is kind of a radical, violent group. A lot of people still haven't, but it's
Wait, blacks
reminding.
aren't violent.
Yeah, but the Black Lives Matter, that's basically it's for black liberation and it's to protest, unfair violence that black people experience at the hands of white racist police. But it's a it really reminds me of the Black Panthers history, in the 60s and 70s, and how they were a violent, just criminal organization, and their history has been whitewashed to where now it's acceptable to be, a Black Panther. But they totally, completely whitewashed the history of the Black Panther Party, and to where now they are, a peaceful Black liberation group who just wanted to be able to defend their communities and decide, the political and economic future of the Black community.
Well, I'm admittedly not an expert on Black Panther history. Can you give any examples on why you would consider them like violent? Did they have shootouts with the cops? Did they blow shit
Yes,
up? Oh, they did.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is the Black Panthers were an anti-American, kind of a treasonous organization where basically the leaders were like Huey Lewis, or Huey Newton, and Eldridge Cleaver, right? And they were both convicted rapists, cop killers, robbers, thieves. This isn't just like some random, like low level guys. These are your leaders of the organization. Eldridge Cleaver, uh, he was the leader when Huey Newton went to jail for shooting a police officer. He had a book called Soul on Ice where he talked about how he practiced raping black women because he could get away with it easier. There wasn't as much policing in the black neighborhoods. He's like, I started on black women, and then after that, I graduated to raping white women, and it felt so good. That was
That's
a
funny that
way.
you mentioned that because I remember reading about that a couple of years ago, and I thought, wow, that's just white people don't have, I think, the mindset to put themselves in the perspective of someone like that. Like, they don't even think that kind of person exists.
Right. And what was interesting about this is he said that this was political activism for him. Raping white women was an insurrectionary act. It was a political act to get back at the white man. So if you notice this is you're committing a criminal act against an innocent person, and that is your definition of fighting for the black community, your definition of fighting for black rights. It's your definition of political activism. And all it boils down to is rape and crime, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it's really not funny, but look at Asians. When Asians came to the United States, they were practically slave labor. They had extremely dangerous jobs. Where was their civil rights movement? They didn't have one. They just worked really hard, earned a lot of money, got educated, and now they are doing better than white folks on average.
Yeah. I mean, think about. I want to make the comparison between the Panthers and the Black Lives Matter. Is criminality is political activism, and we're seeing this as Black Lives Matter becomes more and more powerful. They're equating criminal acts with we're fighting for our rights and social justice. Because if you look at as Black Lives Matter is becoming more and more powerful, they're having more and more protests and demonstrations. There's riots in Ferguson and Baltimore. just people running around destroying property, looting stores. This is what they consider protesting and activism and fighting for their rights and social justice. And it's like they've been in this country for hundreds of years and they're fighting and getting involved in politics and they still don't have anything. When
Sure.
other
What are they fighting for nowadays? Because I think Martin Luther King and the peaceful civil rights movement, which actually accomplished things and got their rights recognized by the government where they weren't, they pretty much took care of things. Like as a black person, you have affirmative action nowadays. There are civil rights, like there are civil rights laws at the federal level. They will come down to the state and come down hard against the state for any civil rights infractions. Like they're more protected than anybody else in the country. What the hell are they protesting about exactly? I mean, criminals
well,
are going to get shot by cops when they try to pull guns on them. But for
what I
some
want
reason, they think this is something they're protest about and not peacefully, violently intimidating people. There was a story I just read. I forget what city. Okay, it was Portland, Oregon. I have it pulled up in front of me. Black Lives Matter goes into a Portland, Oregon restaurant. A bunch of white people are eating brunch, and they intimidate them into expressing support for Michael Brown.
right.
Like by forcing people to agree with you under threat of physical violence, how do they think they're going to get any people to really side with them?
This is the key, dude. Is um we're talking about the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King, right?
Sure.
And that was actually it was not actually really a black led civil rights movement. It was white people and Jews were trying to get more rights for blacks. And it had to do with the Cold War because the Soviet Union was recruiting black or African nations to go to fold to communism. And America couldn't win the African nations because they were like, well, look at the condition of black people in your own country. That's going to happen to us if you're our benefactor. So America had to really quickly get more rights and stuff for black people. So that's where the civil rights movement came out of. It wasn't organized and led by black Africans. As evidence of that, I think there's like the NAACP was started by a Jewish person. All these black organizations a lot of them were just started by black or by whites. They weren't even started by blacks.
I did
So
not know that. That's very interesting.
yeah, and this is to say that they are not capable of the type of peaceful protest that we think everyone is capable of, and it's just the the peaceful organizations were started by white people. The militant criminal ones were started by blacks. And this is what we're seeing is like the reason why they're protesting now is because we keep telling everyone in society that we're all equal, that whites, Asians, blacks, gays, everybody's equal. Well, if you look at the data and the statistics, everyone is different in this country. There's different people live in different neighborhoods. There's different. I think something like 96% of all kindergarten teachers are women, right? That's a
Sure.
huge cluster in that one field. That's it, it's a statistical. There are statistical disparities everywhere you look, and if you're black and you're saying, well, how come we're 40% of us have criminal records, and why are we making less money? Why are less of us graduating from
Why do we live in poor neighborhoods?
Right. If we're all equal, why is all this shit happening to us? Why is all this bad stuff happening to us? Why are we at the bottom? If we're equal, well, obviously it must be because the white man is cheating us somehow. And then if the white man's cheating you, you have to take steps to stop them doing that. But just as this is the Black Lives Matter thing is a criminal organization, which is when blacks get together to protest for their rights, they're criminal. It's just they're criminals.
Well, if the
And
definition of terrorism is, or a terrorist group is a group that uses violence and
yeah,
intimidation to change the politics of a country or people. That's a
which
pretty loose definition, but that's basically
yeah,
so you could consider them. They're using terrorist or, yeah, terrorist type of tactics, intimidating people, even people
they
who are
are.
for them, like whites that are for
Yeah,
them that come to their rallies. There's a story about whites getting harassed and attacked by Black Lives Matter in Dartmouth. People who are
right.
trying to help them, but just because they're white, they face the wrath.
Yeah, definitely. It's the same thing all over the world. Black people are at the bottom. They're criminals all over the world. And it's just, is everybody cheating them? Is everybody treating them unfairly? And the one thing I want to talk about too is with the criminality is if you think about it, Black Lives Matter started over a criminal. And they really really come together over criminals. All the people that they support are just criminals, and those are the ones who give the rallying cries, like Trayvon Martin. Who's that guy in Ferguson?
Mike, was it Michael Brown?
Michael Brown, Freddie
Oh,
Gray.
Trayvon Martin, the leading criminal, or God, what's the title of? He's a doctor. He did the report on the Miami police shooting. Dr. DeMaio is his name. He is the most world-renowned like pathologist when it comes to people being shot. Basically, he
Yeah,
did the analysis on the Trayvon Martin case of what position were the two people in when the gun was fired. And basically he said Trayvon Martin's clothing was hanging loose off his body when the weapon discharged, and they could tell that by how the, I guess, the powder burns or something like that was burned into his shirt, so that Trayvon Martin had to have been the one on top, corroborating George Zimmerman's story. So this whole time, all the blacks, oh, he was just making this story up. He just wanted to murder Trayvon Martin. He wasn't really in danger. He just wanted to kill him because he was black. And
right.
George Zimmerman's a racist. And of course, the media initially said that he's white, which he's not. He's Hispanic. But yeah, like you said, all these saints, these mythical people, these innocent victims that Black Lives Matter has made their champions or rallied around, I should say. If you investigate any of these stories, it always turns out the same way. The media has lied and misinformed everyone, and the truth is that they were actually a criminal doing a criminal activity, and the shooting was justified. Pretty much in all of them.
Yeah, and I mean the most recent cases is the one is Alton Sterling has a criminal record a mile long of like rape, robbery, violence. He's resisted arrest before. It's the same thing over and over again. Criminals get killed by police when they're doing something stupid, and black people do not wait for the evidence to come in. They don't wait for the rule of law in a trial. We have all these like systems in place to deal with stuff where there's, you go to court, you go to trial, you go to
You
before
have
a
due
jury,
process.
due process. And if something's like done wrong, then you can appeal it. There's an appeals process. But I mean, blacks just riot.
It
And
seems very tribal to me.
exactly, and white people, if you notice, they don't chain themselves to the barricade and go over like some white criminal who was shot. We could give a fuck about a white criminal who was killed by the police because we're like, hey, that's a criminal. He was doing something wrong. But black people is it doesn't matter if it was a criminal who was it was a good shoot on the policeman's part. It just matters the color. But they're very tribal.
Well, what do you see happening in the future? Black Lives Matter seems to be picking up steam, and the media, liberal media, seems to be running interference for him and perpetuating these myths that all these people were innocent victims and Black Lives Matter is justified in their rage, and white people need to pay attention and listen to him, as Hillary Clinton says. Where do you think this is going? I mean, what's the momentum? What's happening? What do you think?
Well, you can see how bad it got in the 60s and 70s, right, with the Black Panthers. And just um, this last, the Dallas shooting, there's been, they're stepping it up to where it's not just like, oh, we're having a peaceful protest and it turns violent and there's some rioting and looting. They're actually stepping it up to where they're targeting police officers. And
You know,
then,
with it, like with a child, sometimes when a
mhm,
child wants attention, if they can't get the attention being good, they'll get the attention being bad, and they realize, well, if I act up, I'll get paid attention to by my parents. And I think what Black Lives Matter is noticing is, hey, if cops get shot or we riot and throw Molotov cocktails at cops, we get more attention in the media. More people are going to listen to us. They have no incentive to stop behaving in that manner.
no, they don't. But it's Black Lives Matter is a black, organized, primarily black group. And once you get all those people together, it's going to look like Africa. And it started out with, if you notice, when black people get together and protest injustice or whatever, it somehow always turns into violence. It somehow always turns into thievery and looting and destroying property. And the thing of it is the media whitewashes it as to where, well, they're fighting for their rights, and they whitewash the victim to where he's a saint, he's a family man. The guy's a family man. He was never in trouble with the law. And like all these family men, like the Elton Sterling, the guy's a family man. He was a rapist.
If he was a family man, what was he doing at 10,
One
11
o'clock.
o'clock at night in front of a gas station
It was at
trying to
one
sell
o'clock in the
CDs? Give me a
morning.
break.
Yeah, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and selling CDs supposedly, which who the hell is buying CDs
And at 1 o'clock in the
nowadays?
morning.
That's just like a front for him to sell drugs. Okay, and the other thing, it's like he's a family man, and our family depends on him on a daily basis. That's what the wife said, right? It wasn't the wife; it was his baby's mama, because he's not married. He's such a family man; he's not married, right? And he has, okay, and
Family men are home at 1 in the morning.
they're home at 1 in the morning, not out
They're not in front
selling
of a
stuff.
gas station with a weapon. Not that I care if someone carries a pistol for self-defense, but he was a convicted felon, so he legally could not be in possession of that pistol. That would have sent him back to jail. So he did have an incentive to resist the police, not be arrested, not have that weapon discovered, because he knows he'd go back to jail.
Yeah, and he owed like $25,000 in child support.
He's
What
a
kind of
family man.
He's a real family man, taking care of his kids. They depend on him on a daily basis. But they whitewash it to where, just like they do with the Black Panthers, they did that. Now we're taught in school that they were a peaceful group, but they talk about the Black Panthers the school breakfast program, where they're like, oh, we're giving breakfast to the kids in the morning, that's just another front for them to have their criminal activity, for them to get whitewashed. But we're going to see more from Black Lives Matter. It's going to grow. It's going to grow. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And right now, the only ones who are at risk are the police, right?
Gosh,
And then it's going to grow. It's going to be all white people.
the more you say it's going to get worse and worse and worse, I keep thinking, well, at what point is it going to stop getting worse and worse? And there has to be leadership from the top. What is Barack Obama saying about this? He's calling for a national police force, a federally controlled police force. That's the solution. Uh, God, it sounds like the Gestapo to me. If hey,
Yeah.
we're having all kinds of problems. The only solution is a federal police force, not arresting people and putting people in jail for intimidation and violence. That's not the solution. A federal police force is the solution. So
Well,
you have no leadership from the top, well, unless you count leading us off the cliff. but there's no solutions coming from the top. So, like you said, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Just it's a terrible thought.
Yeah, the Black Lives Matter people, the one thing they want to be treated as equals, but they also want to be handled with kid gloves because every time they do something, Micah Johnson, Micah X, just killed cops and stuff. And Barack Obama and the media will be like, well, it's the guns. We got to get the guns off the streets. And they'll also be like, well, black people do have they have a legitimate complaint, but we got to come together and heal. But they make it say there's like their complaint is legitimate, that they're being unfairly targeted by police. And it's like when the president of the United States is telling people that like, hey, this person, they killed the police, but it was for a legitimate reason. But, we got to come together. It's like, can anybody say that? No, it's not for a legitimate reason. It's because of your behavior. Does anybody say that black behavior is responsible for these increased rates of violence violent interactions between the police? It's always just blame whitey for it. And another thing I want to say about criminality is, this newest assassin, Micah X, or Micah Johnson, who was the Dallas police shooter. This story just came out that he was kicked out of the army for stealing women's underwear and sexually harassing a woman. So we go right back to...
But he got an honorable discharge, apparently.
Wow. This goes right back to Eldridge Cleaver, good old Eldridge Cleaver, who was protesting by raping black women and white women. And here we have a sexual deviant who is protesting this white the white man by sniping cops. And
Hey, you've stumbled onto a subject I wanted to ask you about. Tendencies of what's it called? Psychopathic behavior in different races.
yeah,
Can you tell me about that?
oh my God, I'm gonna have to. Okay, so
I mean,
basically,
we're 20 something minutes into this already. Let's try and condense it down to about, if you can, hit the main points. I don't want us to go over 30 minutes because most people aren't. That's a while to be listening, but it's very interesting.
all right. Well, there's a lot of research coming out. So basically, um, different races, cultures, there are statistical disparities between them. Just as where you could say Asians are on average shorter than others, right? There's or
Asians have a higher tendency to commit suicide when they fail in life.
right, something like that. It's basically mental illness and psychopathic personality or antisocial behavioral personality. They're not equal across all races. So maybe psychopathic behavior, you'll find like 1% of the white population is psychopathic, 1% of the Asian, 1% of the black. It's not like that. It's not evenly distributed across all groups, right? And there are greater instances of psychopathic behavior and personality in the black race. This is basically just coming out. And is one thing, I found one article by Dr. Richard Lynn. He's a researcher. I'm reading an article of his. It's like the American Psychiatric Association has the DSM-4, I believe. And a psychopath is now called antisocial personality disorder. Now, listen to the qualifications
Just for
it.
anyone unfamiliar, the DSM, right?
Yeah, it's like diagnostic.
That is the gold standard. I mean, insurance companies go off like if you're rated in the DSM, you're gonna get covered. Like it's very well it is the bar by which everything else is measured. So that's like if it's in there, if this guy is saying it, if it's in there,
Oh no,
it's legit.
He's not. His research paper is not in the DSM-4. I'm just talking. He has a paper on this, and it's going to be turned into a book. Okay.
Okay, I see.
But where I'm getting this from is, say for anything for what is this stuff? For any kind of mental illness, there's a list of like, 10 or 12 symptoms. And it's like,
The criteria that
yeah, the
yeah,
criterion. And if you meet, like seven of the nine criteria, you are, you know, uh,
you're clinically diagnosed as
yeah,
having that.
you can be diagnosed.
Yeah.
Now, listen to, there's 11 criteria for antisocial personality disorder in the DSM-4. Now, compare these criteria to some of the common, well-known stereotypes of the black community, for African Americans, okay? Here's number one: inability to sustain consistent work behavior. Okay.
So yeah, not blacks. So that's not something blacks do. So what's the next one?
Number two, failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behavior. This is a euphemism for being a criminal. Okay.
So that's two strikes.
Number three, irritability and aggressiveness as indicated by frequent physical fights and assaults. That happens a lot. If you notice, there's a lot more violence in the black community. Okay, number four, repeated failure to honor financial obligations. I'm just going to run right through them and then
Yeah,
we
just
can
go
go
right through
talk.
them all. I think people are getting the idea, but let's hear
Yeah.
the rest of them.
Number five, failure to plan ahead or impulsivity. Number six, no regard for truth, as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others. Number seven, recklessness regarding one's own or others' personal safety, as indicated by driving while intoxicated or recurrent speeding. Number eight, inability to function as a responsible parent. Number nine, failure to sustain a monogamous relationship for more than 1 year. Number 10, lacking remorse. Number 11, the presence of conduct disorder in childhood. Okay, so we just ran off a list. Now I'm just going to go over this. I mean, repeated failure to honor financial obligations. There's a lot of jokes, comedians and stuff that joke about black people having bad credit, right? And white people having good credit. And they blame, like, it's basically that black people can't get a home loan because the lender is racist and the credit reporting agencies are racist. Okay. Failure to plan ahead or impulsivity. Boom. That's, no regard for truth is indicated by repeated lying. Use of aliases. Now, this use of aliases. How many blacks have all these stupid street names? P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, forget. You know what I mean? There's so many.
Jay Z,
Jay Z.
whatever. Fucking God. Yeah. Okay. What's the next one?
Okay, recklessness regarding your personal safety or that of others. I mean, blacks take terrible care of their bodies themselves. There's, obesity, drug use. It's very reckless. Indicated by driving while intoxicated or recurrent speeding. This is another study. I think New Jersey law enforcement did a study that blacks speed at greater rates than whites. Inability to function as a responsible parent. That doesn't even need further explanation. I mean, 70% of blacks are born outside of marriage, single parents, abandonment. I mean, blacks are horrible parents. Failure to sustain a monogamous relationship for more than a year. This is a no-brainer. I mean, it's the greatest rate of syphilis, AIDS, STDs in the black community. Actually, there is a cultural disconnect between white society and Africans because there's something in Africa called, I believe it's called concurrent marriage, where it's their custom to be, you can be married to a woman, but you and your spouse sleep with different people as much as you want. So it's basically their custom is just to be swingers, pretty much.
Wow. Well, sounds like a psychopath to me.
Yeah, and
I don't mean
it's,
to anyone listening. I am not by any means ignorant enough to say all blacks are psychopathic people. but the tendency is there. It is definitely higher, like we've been describing in
Right.
the black community.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's not to say that all blacks are like this or are bad people. There are, there are going to be high IQ African Americans who, have stable jobs. They're good parents. They're good people, law-abiding citizens. It's just to say that there is a large amount of them who are not like that, who are the exact opposite.
I think the point, we talk about the same subject in different ways all the time, but the point
Yeah,
I think we're trying to say to people is, look, it isn't institutional racism. There are real afflictions black people have. And that's the cause of all these disparities in income and housing and educational opportunities. It's not white people holding black people down, it's black people holding black people down. And there's a lot of black people I've known in my life that I respect deeply. Like, I won't get into it, but people I've worked with in the past or friends that I've had, there are some pretty amazing black people out there, but they are the minority. The majority of black people are pretty dysfunctional and exhibit all these tendencies that we just mentioned from
yeah.
the DSM.
I think the problem is that white people and black people are not the same, but the academics and the media keep trying to tell us that we are. Like, I think for myself and you, and I think a lot of other people, they will be like, I give credit where credit is due.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I would never do anything to hold a black man down that was earning his way in life.
But with blacks, it's like, it's not we give credit where credit is due. They want credit where it is not due. And if somebody is underperforming or is in trouble or is just basically, we'll just say a piece of shit human being, then all the excuses come out. As in white culture, it's like we don't like excuses. You own up to whatever your problem is, you own up to it, you accept responsibility, and you move on. But I think there's white liberals and there's blacks who just thrive off of excuse making. And if you think about it, say for example, the Liberia and Monrovia or whatever, were African American settlements in Africa. They're total failures, but there's got to be an excuse for it. It can't be black people's fault. We got to find an excuse, and that's what's getting old is just the excuse making.
I really have a good feeling that, sure, we're moving into some times of conflict, it looks like. But I think at the end of it, because things are getting so polarized, people on our side are having to just come out and be really blunt in our honesty about what the real issues are. And I think on the other end of all this conflict is going to be a much better time in American history where people look at things as they are and address them with real solutions instead of just trying to blame each other or blame white people or make excuses. Once all that stops, I think things can get better. How they're going to get better exactly, I'm not sure. Will we go back to separate but equal? I don't know. Will we get rid of all the stupid affirmative action shit? I hope so. But I just want the excuse making to stop, because when you can stop making excuses, you can start addressing problems.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, the exact solution is unknown. Whether we should give black people a separate country, or a separate, give them give them a certain state to live in, deport them all to Africa, or can we all just live together peacefully? But for any of that to happen, for us to live together, we got to be truthful about things. Because this thing about like everybody's equal is not true. And that's what's a cause for a lot of concern. That's what's causing a lot of the animosity between the races, is because if you ever say anything different, if you ever just stop making excuses for black people, you're shut down with you're a racist. That's racist. What you said is racist. Oh, well, that ends the conversation. And I think what's happening now is people aren't just shutting up anymore. when someone says that's racist, you're a racist, people aren't shutting up. They're starting to be like, no, I've got the documents, I have the data, the statistics, and there are more people on the internet, very intelligent people. If you listen to Stefan Molyneux, he's been having some real doozy of episodes lately about race. You know,
Sure, he had a what I would consider a must-watch episode where he interviewed Jared Taylor from Amren. And for anyone unfamiliar with Amren, could you describe it for me? I think you would do a much better job than I would, honestly.
I mean, Amran is pretty much it's like a intellectual or scientific racial study. I mean, I don't want to say racism, but it's they're not like, oh, we hate you, you're a race traitor, using
They're
epithets.
not afraid to talk about the differences between the races.
And they do it in a very enlightened, very reasonable manner. There's no like epithets used. It's something where it's like they're just talking about there are differences in IQ, intelligence, hormone levels, brain size, all these things, but it's done in a very professional manner. And
Sure.
I think that's what we need to do, because we're not doing anybody any favors by just being like, oh, I hate you because of this, or I hate you because of that. It's like we just basically have to tell it like it is. And
Well, is there anything else that you want to cover? We've clocked in at 37 minutes.
all right, just that Black Lives Matter and the Black Panthers are criminal organizations composed of a bunch of criminals and scumbags. If you notice, all they do is like they just riot, destroy property, loot, steal. Now they've moved on to assassinating police officers. Basically, the president and the media, they're still making excuses for him. And the more they make excuses for him, expect the violence to continue and for them to up the stakes. Okay, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I don't know. I think one of the things is when are I don't want to just say when are white people going to fight back, but just when are all decent people? Okay, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are, the Hispanics, Asians, even some people in the black community. They're not criminals. They're just decent people.
Sure, there's a
And
black police chief out of El Paso that said Black Lives Matter is a
right,
radical hate group.
when are we going to get together and just say we're not taking any of your crap anymore? We're not listening to the excuses. And, if you're so unhappy about it, get the hell out of here.
I agree completely. Well, thank you again for checking out our channel. Please like, subscribe, comment. More to come. Thank you.